I am President of the Hamilton National Council of Women Hamilton branch, also known as NCW. So NCW is an umbrella group that has many affiliated societies under that umbrella. Our purpose is to educate women and to process women's opinions for use locally, nationally and internationally, and also to encourage a gender equal New Zealand. I'd like to welcome you all here tonight. I'd like to welcome all the candidates, and we look forward to some robust discussion. Welcome also to our audience, who will always be, as I imagine, have different perspectives and suggestions. Before we proceed, toilets are through the door to my right and then right again. The main exit in case there is a fire is where you came in and meeting in the car park. So as many of you will know, New Zealand women were granted the right to vote with the passing of the Electoral Act on the 19th of September in 1893. Women voters had just 10 weeks to fill in their claim form and then register to be eligible to vote. Percentages were high in those days. 85% of women who had registered voted. Amy Daly, who later became the president of NCW in 1898, said, and I quote, "Let not babies, the wash tub, or even dinners prevent the woman going to the polls." So what we would be saying in 2017 to those who require a little bit of more motivation: let not mobile phones, weekend shopping, or even sport on TV prevent you going to the polls.
So the floor is yours. Tēnā koutou katoa, ngā mihi nui kia koutou e whiwhi mai nei ko wai au ko tōna pūkere a hau. No hea hau he uri no taranaki hoia no taku hoa rangatira he uri no te puaha o Waikato. My name's Donna Pōkere Phillips and I hail from a beautiful place called Taranaki. However, I married a Waikato boy, so we've been living here in the Waikato for the past nearly 20 years, and it's been our home base. I am a mother of 5 adult children who have now started to have their children, and it's my mokopuna that is the reason why I decided to stand for the Opportunities Party. It's their future that I was concerned about. I was also concerned about the degradation that we see within our waterways and within our environment. So that's just a brisk background of myself. At an academic and professional level, I hold a Master's in Law. I specialise in Māori resource management, and I see one of my colleagues, past colleagues in the crowd the other day. I've also worked for central government in the Ministry of Justice, and I also worked for the Independent Māori Statutory Board, which was at a corporate level, and a number of other organisations. Currently, I'm a consultant. So I've been campaigning full-time for about 2 months. Now the Opportunities Party, I'm not sure. So I'll get on to the Opportunities Party, and like I said, the reasons why I joined them is that, first of all, I started following Gareth Morgan around when he was a philanthropist, and I was quite impressed with some of his work. That he was doing within the community as charitable work. And then when he decided to set up a party, I got really interested in his policies. He's pretty radical in regards to the policies, but if we would want real change in Aotearoa, I think there needs to be a real radical shift. And like he said, radical now, otherwise we're going to have extreme soon. So in regards to the lights are confusing me. My 2 minutes on? Oh my gosh. Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
Right, good evening everyone. Kia ora koutou, my name's Jamie Strange. I'm the Hamilton East Labour candidate, and I'd like to welcome you all here. I'm a married father of 4, 4 children between 4 and 9. Work as a school teacher over at Barclay Middle School. I'm a music teacher, so I'm particularly passionate about education. And I'd like to acknowledge a special woman in my life, and that's my wife Angela. I've been married for 20 years, and she's my best friend. She was then, and she still is now. And she's certainly the closest person to me. And she's looking after the kids tonight. probably struggling to get into bed probably more than anything. But yeah, so look, I'm particularly passionate about education, being a school teacher, and that's the main reason I'm standing. I think it's important to have people in Parliament who have worked in certain fields, whether it's business, whether it's health, or whether it's my area, which is education. In terms of Labour Party policy, we believe the number one issue for this election is housing, particularly up in Auckland, where the average house is $900,000, and it's very difficult for people to get into their first house. In Hamilton, you're looking at $550,000 for the first home, and it's basically we've got some policies which I'm sure will come out in the questions around significantly adding the supply to adding the supply of affordable houses, and also reducing demand around housing. The second issue I'd just like to bring up is around community safety. So Labour will add 1,000 police to the force, and we'll bring back the community policing model. So at the moment we've got the police centralised, just stone's throw down there, but we've got empty police stations dotted all around the city, and we need to put the police back in those police stations so they're acting in a community policing role, get to know the people in their community, and police in that way. So look, thank you for listening, and appreciate being here tonight.
Sorry, I've got to use a mic because I've got a really bad sore throat and tonsillitis. I'm normally a doctor, but I'm a patient these days because speaking at a lot of events, so these guys know the story. Cool. Are we starting now? Cool. Awesome. Kia ora everyone, my name is Gaurav. I am the Labour Party candidate for Hamilton West. I am taking over from Sue Moroney, who's done some really good work over the last 12 years in Hamilton West. I'm going to give you a quick spiel about my life, why I'm here, what I'm doing. So I grew up in Auckland. My dad moved here in 1996. He was homeless. He slept in Auckland Domain, ate at Auckland City Mission. We had very difficult times. What helped me out was education. Went to Auckland Grammar, was the proximate dux of Auckland Grammar, went to Auckland Medical School, trained at Waikato Hospital here, and also in Coromandel, Napier, Hastings. Spent part of my time growing up in Kaikoai as well, where I learned my first haka. After I graduated from medical school, actually before I graduated from medical school, I was on the board of Medical Association. At the age of 19, I helped write a couple of health policies for New Zealand, 3 health policies for New Zealand, and was nominated for the New Zealand of the Year award. At about 22, 23, I ended up going to Switzerland and working for the World Health Organization, where again I worked in a non-communicable disease department. From there on, I went and worked in Spain in public health. I worked in Philippines, Vietnam, Mongolia, different places. Perfect. Cool. So, I've done a lot of work in healthcare, more recently in Washington, D.C., where I was a Fulbright scholar working in business and politics and public health. Why am I here? I'm here because I believe that we can do a lot better than we're doing in terms of healthcare, in terms of society. When my family first moved here, Labour's policies, social security policies really helped us out to get us out of poverty, to give me a new life, give me hope, give me good education. And I think we need to go back to the same old values. I'm sick of seeing people, sitting in ambulances, waiting 2 weeks to go and see a GP, and not having that access to healthcare. So healthcare is my big thing. Jamie's talking about education. And what we're going to do at Labour is there's a $2 billion deficit at the moment in healthcare. We're going to put back $8 billion extra into healthcare, so people have access to GPs and also to mental health services. Sorry I didn't get time to talk, but I'm really passionate about this. Thank you.
Hello everyone, my name is Jo Wrigley, and I'm the candidate for Hamilton West and the Green Party, in case you missed the rosy. I hail from a place near Maungapohatu called Owhakatoro, which is in the Eastern Bay of Plenty. It's north of Rātoki, if you know that place, but it's a wee space. We're at the bottom of Te Urewera. 7 generations of my family come from there. I'm Pākehā, and I have 5 Māori children. Kirikiriroa has been my kāinga for the last 20 years. I'm a community organiser, a beneficiary advocate working in social services in the community sector. I'm Pākehā, I have Māori children, I'm queer, I'm a lifetime learner of Te Reo. I'm going to master it one day. I started my working life in banking, finance and insurance, working in Aotearoa and Australia. I'm a Green Party member and a Green Party candidate because the Greens envision a world where there's equality between men and women. We wish to ensure that all women can enjoy their human rights and fundamental freedoms without discrimination on the basis of sex, and that needs and experiences are specifically common to women are valued and recognised along with the needs and experiences of men. We also wish to dismantle negative compounding effects of gender, ethnicity, disability and class, so that diversity and the uniqueness of all women can be recognised and celebrated as a strength. Kia ora.
Kia ora, I'm Sam Taylor. I'm the Green Party candidate for Hamilton East. And before I say anything else, I really just want to say that it's been such a pleasure. This is my first campaign, and campaigning alongside Joe has just been wonderful. To have two women leading the Green Party in Hamilton is great, and it's been a really supportive, wonderful experience. And actually that's true with all of the candidates. So to tell you a little bit about myself, I'll give you my pepeha. So, ko Porongia te maunga, ko Wakato te awa, Ngāti Pākehā te iwi, ko Baron Aberdare 1868 te waka, ko Mātangi te kāinga, Ngāti Hoa te tangata whenua o te kāinga, ko Tēnā taku whānau, ko Samaho. So I'm Sam, I'm from Mātangi. My great-great-great-grandfather arrived here in 1868. My family have been in Mātangi ever since. So I went to school here. I actually went to school with Tim's daughters. I went to Dio. So that's also been a fun connection. I studied psychology and social policy at Waikato, and for the past 3.5 years I've been working at Anglican Action in the community. And that's really what's driven me to stand in front of you tonight and talk to you about the Green Party, because what I've seen in Hamilton, going to Dio, a very privileged school, and then working in the community with youth justice, is that we kind of have two cities in one city. We have a city of affluence, and we have a city of real deprivation and of compounding social factors. The young people that I work with experience domestic violence. They have all of the kind of trauma that sits with that, and their performance in education reflects it. They have transient housing, low quality houses. Often a parent is unemployed. When a parent is employed, they're usually in low paid work, and they are working so hard they don't have time to spend with their families. And I think that really has to change. So I'm standing for the Green Party because for me, child poverty is the biggest challenge for New Zealand, and it's such a disgrace that we have 295,000 children living in poverty. That's the future of our country, and it's, they're just beautiful little kids, and we have to address that. So that's a huge priority for the Green Party. I've got the red light, sorry.
Jack Elan standing for the Republic of New Zealand Party, supporting the disadvantaged, the mentally ill, and working with the Suicide Prevention Trust has given me insight into what is needed to restore families and create opportunity for the underclass. Our communities need a strong Christian ethic also. As a community radio host, I promote debate on critical issues and attempt to find solutions. As a trainer, entertainer, educator, I help others, being aware of the need to uplift people in difficult times. My background as a spiritual practitioner gives me the understanding to speak for the Republic of New Zealand Party on health policy and the development of the arts as part of our national identity. Okay, the Republic of New Zealand Party believes all New Zealand citizens are equal. Democracy founded in the common good. We pledge our allegiance not only to monarchy but also to the citizens of New Zealand. Power will be balanced between the presidency, the legislature and the Supreme Court, which will protect the people's rights under a constitution. Our 5 ways forward. First of all, a united constitution, equal and human rights before the law. Real Republicans and patriots living for freedom, justice and equality. Enshrining the treaty into a constitution, applying its principles right across the board. Direct democracy, government as it ought to be. We believe that all citizens should participate in the voting. And we need text voting. We need to change the electoral process, and we need to make voting compulsory. Okay? Government as it ought to be. Judges will be answerable to the people to bring greater public accountability. Binding citizens initiated referenda with binding local and national initiatives. One example of binding national referenda would be, do you want a new flag? Family restoration, the biological and extended family. Family and whānau, giving everyone an equal standing, protecting the human rights of families. We will get fathers and mothers back into families. Family court will be replaced by mediation. There's so much family alienation, so many fathers are committing suicide, and we need to recognise the biological family as well as the extended family. Thank you very much.
Hi, I'm David Bennett, MP for Hamilton East, and I'd just like to thank all the organisers, Charlotte and your team, for organising tonight, and for everybody for coming out on a cold night to this meeting. So we appreciate your presence here and your questions and your interest in politics, so thank you. To my fellow candidates, thank you as well. We've had a great campaign, everyone's been very friendly, so it's been good to be part of. When I was elected as the MP for Hamilton East, we had a plan of what we wanted to do with the city, and we wanted to see it grow and achieve its full potential. And the first part of that plan was to link with Auckland, and we did that with the Waikato Expressway that's going to be completed in 2020. And the second part of that plan is now to link with Tauranga. Hamilton is at a very strong position. We have extreme growth in the city, which is great to see. We have new people coming and making Hamilton their home. We have new businesses and infrastructure companies coming and providing jobs and opportunities here, and we have very strong social services in our hospital and university. Those things are at risk if we do not have a national government re-elected. The next big thing for Hamilton is to link with the Bay of Plenty. National is the only party that is proposing to do that. No other party is going to give anything that would help Hamilton grow other than the National Party. So our city has the most to lose at this election if there is a change in government. When we look at New Zealand going forward and how Hamilton is doing well in the National Party, we're not going to increase taxes on people through a capital gains tax, a land tax, or any other tax that may be in the plans. We're going to keep strong economic management so that interest rates are not going to go up for homeowners. We are going to have a strong balance sheet in government so that we can actually have that growth and opportunities for people to get jobs and get ahead. Those are the things that New Zealanders demand and need. We do not need to put that at risk by taxation, silly spending, and unfounded promises. So that's the question that you will have in 10 days' time, and thank you once again for the chance to speak.
Tēnā tātou katoa, na mihi nui kia koutou, ko Tim McIndoe toku ringawa. Why am I doing this? It's Maori Language Week. Ko nei te wiki o te reo Maori, me whakanuia e tātou. I think we should celebrate our native tongue. Thank you very much to Charlotte and the NCW for organising this. Could I join with David in thanking all of you for coming out? It's hugely encouraging to have an audience because at times the candidates sort of sit here and think, well, there are only 3 of you and there are 12 of us. And I also want to acknowledge the fact, I have to say I've been involved in quite a few election campaigns now. This has probably been the most pleasant in the sense that there's been really spirited debate over the issues, but there's been no nastiness, no acrimony. So thank you to everybody behind me for that. I'm Tim McIndoe. I've had the great privilege of being the MP for Hamilton West for the last 9 years. My wife Anne and I proudly live in the Hamilton West electorate that I represent. It is the best electorate in the country. I was going to pretend I was 25, but I've been outed by Sam that our now adult daughters and she went to school. I'm really proud of our young people because I think Sam and my daughters, and probably your children as well, are incredibly passionate, well-educated young people, and we've got great young people. Let me move on to a few things for policy. David has covered some things that I wholeheartedly agree with, but we've worked really hard in our 9 years in government to turn the economy around. When we came into office, we were told we faced a decade of deficits and there were going to be all sorts of real problems. And then, of course, the global financial crisis came along, and then we had the Canterbury earthquakes. So the impact on our country has been huge, not to mention Rena and the Pike River disaster and all sorts of other things. So we said, no, we've got to do a lot better than that, and we have. But ultimately, an economy is all about people. And so I want to focus on the social investment policy, because it is about saying, yes, as we can all agree tonight, there are a number of people doing it tough, including here in Hamilton. And social investment is all about identifying those people and putting the right sort of services around them, and us being accountable to you for every dollar of your money that we spend. I think I'm almost out of time, but I hope we'll have a chance to get into that a little bit deeper tonight. Because I remain in politics and I seek your support because I want to help everybody to have the same opportunities that Sam and my daughters have enjoyed. Because I'm really proud of this country. I want it to be a country that you and your children and your grandchildren and others to come will feel as much opportunity and much excitement about being a part of as we do. Thank you again for your participation.
Kia ora everybody, my name is Shane Wihongi, and I share a bit of a sad feeling at this moment, because if I understand correctly, this may well be the last time I will be joining a stage with these fellow candidates. Over the last several weeks, we've spent sometimes every night together. So there is a pinch of sadness in my heart that that will be coming. Not huge sadness, but some sadness that will be coming to an end. As I said, my name is Shane Wihongi. I'm the Hamilton West candidate for New Zealand First. I was born and raised in Northland, however my family moved to Hamilton the better part of 25 years ago. So although, as some people say, my bones rest in Northland, this is still very much my home. The other part, I guess, and as I appreciate the invitation to come here and present to this meeting by the National Council of Women, is I would like to think that my parents taught me about gender equality by the birth of their children. There are 3 boys and 3 girls in our family. To make it even more so, we were born girl boy, girl boy. So I would like to think my parents, by some miraculous feat, managed to imbue gender equality and those sorts of issues as well. My sisters, my mother and my 3 nieces all live here in Hamilton, so sometimes I think family lunches are Council of Women meetings. Why am I a member of New Zealand First? It was not by happenstance. It was a genuine choice that I made to join New Zealand First. I believe in its principles, I believe in its name, and part of my reason for putting myself forward as a candidate is to want to talk about those things as I've gone about this community. So thank you very much for the opportunity. Appreciate you all for being here and look forward to the questions which will be coming. Thank you.
Tēnā no tātou. My name is Peter Perone. Well, I'm commonly known as Peter Perone, and it would take at least 2 minutes to give you my full name. And can I say you're looking at a very rare species. Rare in the sense that for the last 51 years, I wake up in the morning and find that the same woman is next to me. And I'm very proud of that. We have 3 adult children, 6 mokopuna, that's grandchildren, 2 dogs and a cat. And I never ever thought that I would end up here in New Zealand. Well, I'm appreciative of it, the New Zealand that we see now, because it certainly wasn't the New Zealand that I was born into. And it's for that reason that I've stood for politics, because I want to repay the generation before me, because me and my family enjoy a quality of life that your generation provided for me, and I want to be able to provide something similar, if not better, for the generation that follows me. And that is why I'm, with my relation here, has joined New Zealand First, because we put our country first. 4 things. affordable housing, access to good health services, employment, and education and training are the 4 platforms in which New Zealand First is promoting in this campaign. Kia ora.
Well, thank you very much. And wow, they did well, didn't they? And hardly anyone went over the red light, because in Toastmasters, you get the buzzer every time. Everyone spoke about family, which was just lovely, because this week I had my latest little grandson born, and his name was Monte Esmond Hudson, and he is just an adorable little bundle of cuddleness. So, yes. Right, I'm going to mix it up a little bit, just simply because of the order that you find yourself sitting in is not the order that I was told you were going to be sitting in. So I'm going to ask David Bennett if he'd come to the lectern first, please.
Off to the principal's office.
This is the bad one.
I would remind you that you get 2 minutes, so you'll get a light at 1.5, 1 3/4, and 2. So I'll just remind you of that. Right, this is the question. New Zealand children are becoming more obese and overweight. What are the party politics around this? New Zealand children are becoming more obese and overweight. What are, don't look at the adults, what are the party politics around this? Policy, sorry.
Well, thank you for the question. Well, there's a system called Project Energise, which is done by Sport Waikato, which is a very effective approach, and is trialled in the Waikato first of all, and now is being rolled out throughout the country. And that promotes children into sport and active activities while at school, and also to watch what they eat, and teaches healthy living. So that's a really important example of what the government has done by funding that program, and by extending it through New Zealand. That's a really important way of delivering for the question and that you wanted the answer for. The other thing is really primary health care is so important, and so we need to have our young people active because that's a really important part of looking after their body and providing that activity through their life, so that's actually an important part of primary health care. So that I think encouraging that. Supporting sports is also really important. You see that we've built the velodrome, for example, not far away from here. We support high performance sport, which is really important because that gives a good role model for young people that want to go into an active lifestyle. So I think that's really important. I think also to have a society that welcomes people with different interests and different sporting desires is really important. So, you know, I think we need to move away from sort of just the rugby and move into other sports, and really women's sports I think is something that needs more support in New Zealand. Really, if you look at women's sport in Australia, it's taking off with the things like AFL, cricket and that, and women's sport in New Zealand certainly needs more support and professionalism in there. You know, a top netballer does not get nowhere near as much as a top rugby player, and so often has to play overseas. So I think that's an area where we can work harder to get more equality. Thank you.
So Peter, at the end, New Zealand First Party, would you like to come up and take the lecture, please? Thank you. We are aware that there is a chronic shortage of available, reasonably priced family housing in Hamilton. How does your party propose to remedy this urgent need, and will this include more state housing?
Yes, first of all, our policy is to stop the further sale of any state houses. 2, to acquire land so that we can build on houses, and thirdly, to make it easier for developers to acquire the resource consents that they need. But it comes with a rider that of their total development, at least 34% of their development is made available for affordable housing. And just to respond to the obese child one, New Zealand First has well, we're considering a policy of a sugar tax.
So can I please welcome Donna up to the... You? Prison. Does your party have a policy or view of allowing for more police? Does your party have a policy or view of allowing for more police?
I think in regards, well, I think it's a two-point question because you said prisons and and definitely, well, New Zealand is the second highest in the OECD countries in regards to incarceration, and we're only just behind. The US in regards to that. Now, in some of the prisons, not all of the prisons, but in some of the prisons, 80% of those people that are in there aren't actually prisoners; they're actually on remand. So we do need to look at reviewing the Bail Amendments Act in regards to that issue, because I think it's an indictment. In regards to Māori, it's a major issue. And so how the Opportunity Party wants to deal with the issue of crime is actually go back to the core issues, and the core issues, poverty is a core issue of crime. So we link it back to poverty, we link it back to people not having enough money in their pockets. So we want a tax reform, and in that tax reform, 80% of New Zealanders will be better off. The 20% that actually going to pay more will be the likes of Gareth Morgan, who established the Opportunities Party. And he's saying that, you know, on average, he's paying 10% tax, whereas the rest of us, depending on where we are in the scale of our employment, are paying between 24 and 30%. So that's the first point. The other one is our unconditional base income. We also want to deal with poverty in regards to establishing an unconditional base income for the youth, because they feel like they've been discarded by a number of governments over the years. And so that will allow them to go to training, to go to work, to set up a business, and for families with children under the age of 3. So what we're doing is we're going to give them a hand up and to actually deal with some of the major issues of poverty. By looking at those major points, we're hoping that we can make a dent in the issue of incarceration, and we want to spend $110,000 that every prisoner clocks up per year on rehabilitation and education.
I'd like to now welcome Tim to the lectern, please.
Right.
I'm hoping I get lucky.
So, water. Do you think water should be taxed? Do you think water should be taxed?
No, the National Party is not into introducing new taxes. We don't need new taxes. We have an economy that is going well, and we are the party of low taxation. Frankly, a water tax will make an enormous difference for the worse in our productive sector, whether it's across the dairy industry, horticulture, viticulture. Water taxes will really destroy some of our most productive sectors. And these are things that we as New Zealanders rely on for our export earnings and for the strength of our economy. And so no, we don't.
Please welcome Jamie. Midwives. What will your party do to address the shortage of midwives? What will your Party do to address the shortage of midwife training?
Okay, right. I have long experience being a midwife, but I actually did, true story. I caught 2 of my babies in the water, you know, the water bird. And I've been told, I've been told that when the baby comes out, they can stay underwater because they're breathing through the cord. So I had the baby, and I was like saying to the midwife, "Can I just leave the baby under there for a while? Do you want a scientific experiment?" The midwife said, "Bring it up." And I was like, anyway, look, we had the same midwife for all 4 of our children, and it was a real honour. She's an amazing woman. Certainly, our midwives absolutely do a wonderful job, and we know that firsthand. The whole health area needs more funding, as Gurab was saying, and the midwives certainly fit into that. And I know the midwives have been struggling around the funding in recent years. And I don't know our exact policy on midwifery, but I know we're going to add to the health system to basically fund it properly. And I'm confident that the midwives will absolutely be a part of that. The Labour Party asked an independent company called Infometrics to tell us the state of our health system. And they said $2 billion has been stripped from it since 2008. Now, I know National will say that they've added record amounts, and they may have added, I'm not disputing that, but it's not working, our health system. I was up at the hospital around 3 weeks ago, and I was talking to nurses, particularly in the ED, emergency department, and they haven't got enough beds. Even Bob Simcock said they're 400 beds short up there. There was a woman sitting in a chair for 8 hours with a broken hip, mattresses on the floor. So look, when Labour get into power, which will hopefully be in a couple of weeks' time, we're going to have a good look at the whole health system, because it's absolutely vital that we have a good, strong public health system for New Zealanders.
Right, I'd like to welcome Sam up now, please.
Kind of terrified, to be honest. Don't even get to speedily Google anything. Right, I'm ready.
Okay, education. What benefits for tertiary education are you going to offer? Sorry. What benefits for tertiary education are you going to offer, Sam?
Thank you. So tertiary education is a really significant part of the Green Party education policy, but it isn't the total of it. So what I will tell you is that for every year studied and every year of student debt accrued, if someone were to work and volunteer and give back to the community in New Zealand, we would wipe a year of debt for a year worked. So that's to ensure that New Zealand can retain our skills and that we can retain our expertise of the graduates that we're training. What we know is more effective than the current student loan scheme, which we do support with zero interest, but ideally what the Green Party would like to move towards is funding the institutions instead of the individual reduce tertiary fees, and we would instead direct the funding to the institutions so they are better equipped to be able to plan their curriculum and courses and needs, and generally for institutions that's a lot more effective way of funding things. Yeah, I mean tertiary education is hugely important, hugely valuable part of our economy, and for the Green Party, we would also restore the training incentive allowance to enable people who are on welfare to be able to access training and education. Very important issue for New Zealand and very important issue for women particularly. And we would also restore funding for postgrad education. Right now, if you were to go into postgrad, and it's certainly stopping me doing it, you're going to accrue far more debt and you're not actually going to be able to access a significantly higher wage gap. So yeah, really important issue. In terms of education in general, the Green Party's principle and policy is that we see it as a public good. We think it's really important to invest in. It's an important equaliser and a really important aspect of social mobility. Yeah, so I guess those are our main things. We also, we've actually just announced a policy for special education, which I think is really important to ensure that children with all needs and all learning styles, no matter their ability or their special talents, are able to access the same quality of education and can access the same kind of life outcomes as a result of that. We think that's really important. And we also support the claims of teachers around support staff and learning and education, so very important.
Wasn't so nerve-wracking, was it? Yeah. Please welcome Jack.
Yeah.
We're staying in the education field. Teachers are becoming more and more in demand and schools continue to grow. What will your party do to ensure our young New Zealanders are receiving receiving a good education?
Well, I'd place a focus on young Republicans for a kick-off, that with the human rights, they need to be equipped to be social justice advocates to promote the human rights for everyone. Free education and also a student allowance is also very important for our youth. Plus, I think we need to equalise things, like we've got a lot of women teachers, but I think we need a lot of male teachers, because there's a lot of suicide going on in our schools and so forth, and so therefore we need counsellors in all the schools. So I think education is not only about book learning, about the basics in life, which is arithmetic, reading and writing, but it's also about alternative health and the young ones being empowered and peer mentoring and so forth, and being there for one another. So yeah, I think interest-free loans for those who are going to school, because that's the up-and-coming generation, and we need to pass on the baton to their youth, because they are the future. So I think educating our youth and equipping them for the future is of vital importance. So our party would make free education available, and would make student allowances available, and would also have more male teachers, and the focus would be on educating our youth in terms of their own rights and what they can stand up for. Thank you.
Right, Joe. Oh, you're a brave lady. Come on up.
It's purifying it.
Right, your topic is actually sexual abuse. What are your views on teaching what sexual consent is? When do you think teaching for this should start?
I only have 2 minutes.
Yeah. Sorry.
I think in relation to sexual abuse, we shouldn't teach about sexual abuse. We should teach about sexual violence prevention. It's prevalent in New Zealand. We have terrifying statistics about how it affects not only women, girls, and people of diverse genders, but also men and boys. It's a travesty for the entire nation, and we're seeing that in the stories at the moment of sexual abuse and violence within the social welfare and state system. The Green Party would absolutely support the full inquiry into the state system, not only to recompense and make it up in some way to the victims of that, but also to moving forward to rectify and to make sure that that can never ever happen again. As far as sexual violence prevention, and it's about informed consent. Informed consent is something that is contained within the Bill of Rights in this country, and there's no age limit for informed consent. As soon as you're able to make a decision and judge that, then it is your legal right to make that decision. The education we need is about how we uphold informed consent. It not only applies to sexual violence prevention, but it also applies to other aspects of our life, such as being participating citizens, but also in relation to children, it applies to things like bullying and harassment at school, and then it continues through. Informed consent should underlie that, so I think that we should be teaching that informed consent aspect of that at a very young age, and I would say primary school to start that part of the discussion. Sexual violence prevention will continue out of that, probably starting more around the intermediate age and moving forward into high school as it becomes more about relationships. Kia ora.
Shama, you told us it's a patient tonight.
Any questions left?
Yeah. Yes. Pay equality. What is your party doing to decrease the pay gap between men and women? Read that again?
No, not for the question. Thank you. Well, I guess first of all, I want to say, I've had something else to read. I wasn't going to be here today, actually. I had something else to go to. And one of my mentors, who I met in 2008, and I really look up to her. We were at a foreign affairs thing, and I met her in 2008, and I was really looked up to her. I met her recently again, and she said to me, "You must go to the NCW thing." So she is the new president of NCW, Vanessa Deru, and she's done a lot of good work in terms of gender gap, whether it's related to pay equity but also in terms of what she's doing with the board roles on various organizations. So I just want to kind of give a shout out to her because she's done a lot of good work in this field. Personally, I think we have a long way to go before we get to a point in New Zealand where there is gender equity in terms of pay. In terms of labour policies, there was a recent case where mental health workers had an increased pay given out because of suing the government for it. I think the disabled people who didn't end up getting the high pay rise is something we've supported for a long time, and Jacinta's always talked about it. So we're all for a higher pay for women, or actually rather equal pay for women, and there should be absolutely no discrimination between men and women in pay and also in job opportunities. So I don't see why any job should be specifically advertised to men or women, and the pay, there should be no pay gap. Thank you.
Please welcome Shane. Oh yeah, you thought you were
Breathe, everybody. We're the nervous ones. You guys breathe. It's on McDonald's, isn't it? That's question time.
Mental health. Has your party any plans for the overhaul of the mental health services so the patients receive prompt, appropriate and effective treatment?
Thank you. The short answer to that question is yes. Unsurprisingly, the short answer is yes. Through the duration of this campaign, I've been confronted with the question about mental health quite a lot. And so that sort of tells me that it is a real issue in our communities and in families. Unfortunately, I had the misfortune of actually having a relative who committed suicide. And the compelling thing about that was when I was at a committee meeting and I mentioned to the others that had happened, in a room full of 7 others, 6 mentioned that they had a loved one, a family member being treated or having had treatment with mental health. And that was a mixture of genders and ethnicities and age groups. And that really brought it back to me at just how prevalent this issue is and how important it is that it receives the resourcing and the attention that it needs. It is not like other sort of health issues in the sense that you cannot see mental illness. When there's a cut or a bruise or a broken bone, you can see that. But with mental illness, you can't see that. And so it takes a lot more attention, a lot more care, and a lot more treatment. And generally it takes a lot longer to respond to and to deal with. So we need to be upfront and have those discussions. We also need to make sure that the people who are supporting those with mental illness, they have the care, support and the income that we expect for people, who are carrying out this crucially important service in our community. So, thank you.
This time, you're right there. I'm going slightly different order. I'd like to welcome Donna back to the lectern, and we're just going to stay on mental health. Are there any plans to build and staff modern facilities for patients with mental health requirements who need hospitalisation and effective follow-up care?
I suppose in regards to the specific policy, we don't deal in the specifics of policies. We deal at a broader level, and for me the question is, why do we have a lot of mental health problems in New Zealand, Aotearoa? Why do we have high suicide rates in New Zealand, Aotearoa? And a lot of it goes back to families not being able to function properly within their communities, and I guess I want to bring it back to that and bring our focus back to that, because by dealing with just the mental health issue, that's the ambulance at the bottom of the cliff. And the Opportunities Party wants to be somebody at the top of the cliff that's going to stop them from falling over. And so that's where we want to focus in regards to our tax reforms, in regards to the unconditional base income, and our education policy, and also our immigration policy, because for people to feel valued, you know, they want to actually go out and work, and if they can't access the jobs and get paid a livable wage for those jobs, then the dysfunction starts creeping in, and then you have issues with cannabis, alcohol, and all those rough issues. And I can say personally that I've experienced a lot of those issues within my whānau. I've experienced suicide within my whānau, and it's not a good thing. You know, even if you're maybe one step removed from that, it still impacts on you. It impacts on your community. It impacts on your neighbours. So it's a real major issue, and I want us to get to the cause of the problem rather than being their ambulance at the cliff. Now, in saying that, our health policy is about regionalising. So we know, as with Māori know what's good for Māori, and the Opportunity Party says that the community knows what's good for the community. But what's important there is that if the community are going to take up that big challenge, and there's some amazing NGOs and amazing charitable trusts, they need to be resourced appropriately. And that's the key for the Opportunities Party, is to resource the communities to take care of their communities. Kia ora.
Tim.
See if I get lucky this time.
Prison. What is your policy for rehabilitation of prisoners? What is your policy for rehabilitation of prisoners, Tim?
Right. It is clearly a very important topic. We've got a large prison population that worries most people, and there are a number of people in prison who are suffering from a number of different mental health conditions, addictions, undetected or inadequately detected health needs such as gluea, etc. There's also a major problem with lack of literacy and numeracy skills. And so rehabilitation is a very, very important aspect of our overall criminal justice policy. We have introduced the Out of Gate initiative, which is a really significant thing, because one of the most at-risk times for anybody who has been in prison is immediately following release, when quite often they are not welcomed back into the home or whatever environment they might have been in prior to going to prison. And so Out of Gate is a policy designed to ensure that there's really intensive wraparound support for those people to try to find them both somewhere to live and also something appropriate. If they could move into accommodation, then clearly that's, you know, some sort of house, then clearly that's what we want to do. There are a number of things happening here in Hamilton that are really good. There's a very smart new corrections facility down in the old postal centre down near Vialoo Street, or off Vialoo Street. That is doing a tremendous job in making sure that relationships are established to just guide the transition, because rehabilitation is a really challenging area, but if we don't have effective rehabilitation, then the rate of recidivism is so high that almost certainly you're looking at somebody going back into prison. It is also why we have introduced a policy at this election of trying to deal with our most serious young offenders, many of whom are guaranteed to go to prison because of the gravity of the crimes that they have committed. And our aim is to give them a defence-led course down at Wairau for a year. Yes, there'll be a lot of discipline in it, but this is not just a boot camp. This is about giving them the wraparound services that they need, intensive work on their literacy and numeracy, intensive efforts to try to deal with health issues, in particular drug and alcohol addiction issues, and to give them a sense of purpose and some job training. So while I didn't get lucky there, I hope I've given you some information that's useful to you.
What a lucky subject is.
Well, I wanted his question.
Do we have an opportunity to respond to some of the discussion? Because I work in youth justice, and I'd love to talk about youth justice.
Please welcome Jamie back to the lectern, please.
I haven't got notes, so.
I don't know why we need to lean on the medicinal cannabis. What is your position on cannabis for medical use? What is your position on cannabis for medical use, Jamie?
Okay, my personal position?
Yeah.
Okay, so my personal position is that I believe there is a place for medicinal cannabis, particularly in terms of pain relief. I'm more conservative on liberalisation or decriminalisation of cannabis, but in terms of medicinal cannabis, I absolutely think there is a place for that. Damien O'Connor, one of our Labour MPs on the West Coast, he's been lobbying for the medicinal use of cannabis. Now, it's obviously important how it would be regulated, and there must be clear, careful checks and balances around who's given it and how much they're given. But I would personally like to see it introduced in terms of pain relief. Yeah.
What's Labour's policy on it? Has Labour got
I don't think Labour have got a policy on it because it would be a conscience vote. Unless anyone wants to correct me.
No,
do we have a policy?
Yeah, I think you do. I think you. Jacinda's come out and said.
Yeah. So Jacinda Ardern is in favour of it.
Legalise tax and education.
She said she would look at it.
She might have said she'd look at it, I don't know, or maybe. Look, I mean, anyway, my personal view,
It's your view, Jamie.
I can talk about that.
Stick with your view.
Yeah.
Please welcome Sam back to the floor. Thank you. Rural living. What thoughts do you have on rural-proofing your policies and initiatives to ensure that those living beyond the urban areas are not being disadvantaged? Sam.
Yeah, that's a fantastic question. And the rural communities are as important to the Green Party as our urban communities. We think that applies in terms of education, in terms of healthcare, certainly in terms of climate and farming also. So we're really invested in supporting our farmers to transition to more sustainable agriculture. And so there's a real big financial burden, I think, carried by our farmers. They work so hard and they're making very little return. And in exchange, the environment's being really seriously degraded. So we want to support farmers to be more financially sustainable within their own farms and also more environmentally sustainable. We're really committed to ensuring that everyone in rural communities has the same access to quality medical care, to quality education, to all of the things that they need. And one of the ways that we're looking at regional development is actually through rail. So what my colleague David said earlier about how National Party are the only ones who are going to develop regions is a complete mistruth, unfortunately. So we have a plan for rapid rail, which would connect Tauranga, Hamilton, and up to Auckland, which is a really essential part of developing the region and ensuring that, I guess that there's jobs and economic opportunities and well-being for everyone. Yeah.
What about youth justice?
I would love to speak about youth justice. Thank you for bringing that up. With my remaining time, I would really, really like to talk about National Party's crime and punishment policies. So what they're talking about is a boot camp idea. And the stats from Just Speak say that boot camps have in the past, in the 1980s, it was called corrective training, and it resulted with 71% of attendees being reconvicted within 3 years, and 2 years after that, 98% of people that attended the so-called corrective training program reoffended. Now, more recently, there's a program called MAC, and it's essentially what Tim described, and it's running. Well, it was running now. 4 years ago, the scientific advisor to the government said that it was a bad policy and they should stop. So in announcing this policy, they're ignoring their own scientific advice. But further, if you're interested, MAC, from 2013, they had 57 participants. 84% have since reoffended. So I really think that it's a tried and failed policy. It's a harmful policy, and we need to serve our youth so much better by addressing the things that they actually need. And what that is about is trauma.
Please welcome Jack back up to the... Medical school. What are your views on the medical school in Hamilton? Does your party support this?
Yes, we are for free medical care and training our own doctors in our own area. because it's obvious that so many people need support in our communities, and we need 24/7 access to care at pharmacies right around the clock, because obviously, like, you know, with the trauma and with the sickness rate that's going on in our communities, that we do need doctors there. And I also see the sense that we can specialise in our own medical system here in Hamilton. Why do we have to send them down to, like, bring them in from overseas or whatever? Why can't we train our own doctors in our own area here in Hamilton? And I would surely be fully in favour of free medical care, training our own doctors here, and because we also have long waiting lists, and we're not paying our nurses enough, and with these CEOs taking $250,000, there's not enough money going into supplying healthcare and looking after our own people. So I am 100% in favour, as a Republic of New Zealand Party, in our own doctors being trained here. And I think if we paid a bit more tax like they do in Finland, and they take care of all the healthcare and all the needs, and I think money shouldn't go to the CEOs, but money should go into taking care of people. Thank you.
Come on, David. You've had plenty of say along the line there, so now you can get up and have
So this is a
go.
record case. Ask for that later. Rail, come on.
Euthanasia. What is your view on euthanasia, and should it be legalised?
That's a really big question, and there's legislation being proposed to go through the Parliament now around euthanasia, and that's the David Seymour bill. I personally, at this stage, won't be voting for his legislation. I haven't really had a great look at it because it hasn't gone through the committee process and all that, but just in essence, I'd need a lot of convincing to go down that track. So my gut feeling is no, but that may come in front of the Parliament. If it does come up, I don't think it will get enough support to go through. I think something like that would be better to come from one of the major parties to actually get more support to actually pass. I just can't see it going through.
Well, you spent 25 million on a flag, 26 million.
Yeah, and we did, and Labor's going to spend that on a referendum around whether there's we're a republic or not. So that's something that happens. So you know that's part of politics. You know?
Where does it get that?
Please welcome Joe. Yay! New Zealand's total debt was recently reported to be in trillions of dollars. What is the Green Party plans to reduce this debt?
It's not trillions.
85 billion.
No, it's not trillions.
Anyway,
Are we ready?
Up on the cheap seats.
So our view is we actually need to have a different path forward, and that includes the green economy. So we know that the industrialised economies are dying, that there are industries that are sunset industries such as mining and drilling, which we don't support, but there are new industries that we do support. And you know, there's the small things such as bottle recycling and plastic bags, you know, the baby steps there that will create new jobs. And we're talking, you know, for the Plastic Bag Free New Zealand initiative, there's 2,500 jobs across the country potentially can be created there. So what we're talking about is looking at the green economy, new jobs, new areas, new thought into how that goes. Also, back to the regional rail. Mr. Bennett doesn't know what a triangle is. So we're particularly fond of the idea of connecting Tauranga, Hamilton and Auckland by rail. And what that will do in the interim is actually connect up all of those rural areas to Kirikiriroa. So we're the centre of the tertiary universe for the Waikato, and we need to bring in those rural towns to make it easier to travel. Also, if people can easily travel between the main centres and purchase properties or homes in rural towns, there's opportunities for families to own homes there, but also to replenish the rural economy.
Yeah.
I grew up in a part of New Zealand that had a rural economy, had a small town, had a thriving town, had a thriving population. We had nurses, doctors, lawyers, schools, dental nurses, everything that you would require, and a good old rail yard out the back keeping it all going. We want to see rural communities thrive, and that is the new economy.
Oh, thank you. You thought that I looked the other way. Housing. What is your party's plan for emergency housing for people who find themselves in vulnerable situations?
So first of all, housing. See, housing is very close to me. As I started by saying, my dad was homeless when we first came here. I sort of found myself go back to the same situation again. I came back from US after studying at George Washington University a couple of months ago. And in those few months, it's been very hard for me to find any accommodation. I was living on in a bunk bed with a lot of immigrants and a lot of people who were in emergency housing. There's a Maori guy there with his young 11-year-old child, and they were all wondering if this guy's actually running for parliament. We couldn't get a house. Same thing in Hamilton. I've been sleeping on the floor in sleeping bags at my friends' houses because it's just impossible to get a flat, even for rent. And you can talk to any real estate agent in this city. I've talked to everybody, and it's just been impossible to get a house. So that's first problem. So I think the first thing is to recognize there is a housing crisis, which the government has not recognized until very recently. Second thing is we've got to build more houses. We need the houses. Labour's been talking about 100,000 extra houses that we're going to build over 10 years. Third thing is more state housing. So we've got to stop selling away our state houses, because state houses are for our people. It's not to make money out of it. Houses are homes. It's not a way to make profit. That's what housing is for. That's what housing used to be for when I was growing up. In terms of emergency housing, well, look, at the moment, building houses is a long-term sort of thing. We do have to do something in the short run, and I guess the solution would be that we'll be investing a lot more in short-term housing for the government. But we can't be selling our houses in the longer run. We're going to be building more houses. And the other thing we've talked about is immigration, but we haven't really talked about tonight is controlling immigration as well, because it's not about whether immigrants are good or not good, because that's how nationals spun it. Well, what it is about is the fact that the population growth is tremendous. Auckland's population has grown up by 10% in 3 years. There is absolutely no place in Auckland to get a house, and especially in Hamilton as well. But as somebody who spent 18 years growing up in Auckland, I see that there is no place in Auckland to get a house. So our policy: more houses. Sorry, I've run out of time. More houses in the long run, and in the short run, more state housing. But houses are for people. It's not to make profit out of it. Thank you.
Please welcome Shane up here.
We make a ripper pub quiz team. Be really good.
Be a great pub quiz team.
Really Shane, we all think we had the right answer.
Sorry?
In our pub quiz team, we all think we had the right answer.
Well, that's the other challenge.
I can imagine that scrap just to get one question answered.
Right, sorry about that. It's getting a bit confused.
A good easy question.
Yeah, this is something passionate to my heart actually. So, what would your party do to encourage a cleaner Waikato river? What would your party do to encourage a cleaner Waikato river? Okay.
Is it not clean already?
No.
Well, I mean, part of considering about river cleanliness, and particularly here in the Waikato with the Waikato River, is to look at the things that are polluting the Waikato River. So inevitably then that leads us to, we need to reduce the pollution that is going into the Waikato River and rivers generally. We need to do that not just by, in some cases, fencing rural areas, but considering how much pollution has been contributed in city or urban centres to river degradation. And I say that because although I live here in Hamilton, in the Waikato, I'm on a farm block in Northland. And so one of the things we're having to do in Northland is to plant trees and fence off our rivers to the better part of $100,000. And that would be okay if we weren't having to fence flood zones. So when the river comes up, so does half our fence. So that's what I mean. We need to actually consider where is the pollution coming from for our waterways. When you have intensified population in a single area, you need to consider whether it's happening here in urban centres or whether it's in our rural communities with farmers. It can be easier to say it's farmers with intensification in farming and rural sectors, but with a smaller population base, we do have to consider the contribution, unfortunately, that we who might live here in Hamilton, the contribution that we are having to the quality of our river here. So, thank you.
Second question, so please have a warm welcome to Peter. Thank you. What is your understanding of the prevalence of married youth suicide? What is your understanding of the prevalence of married youth suicide?
Okay, my understanding is that this is a community support. The economic situation that many Maori find themselves in, and more importantly, the lack of services to address the problems that young Maori confront. But I ought to say that this is not just a Maori problem, and so my responses are not just confined to Maori families, but for all families that find themselves in this situation. And so New Zealand First supports the idea of the review of the mental health services, because we want to identify just where services are needed, and more importantly, to strengthen the health service workforce, because therein lies the difficulty that we in New Zealand First see, that we do not have enough services to service the people who need it. But I ought to say that for Māori, the breakdown for Māori is the cultural aspects that they once enjoyed, where everyone took responsibility for looking after one another. Growing up, I can recall, well, I didn't regard it as pinching, but I took an apple of someone's tree, and the guy caught me, so he gave me a good kick up in the back, up the backside. So I went home and told my father. Well, guess what? I got an even worse in the backside. And that was an example of a community looking after itself. And if we don't do that, then things are only going to get worse.
Thank you very, very much. All of you've answered those questions just beautifully, and I'm amazed. Really impressed, so well done to you. I'm going to ask you one question, and you all get a chance to stand up for 2 minutes and give your answer to the same question. Okay? So we'll have the lights as the same as before. What are your 3 highest priorities for New Zealand health system? What are your 3 highest priorities for the New Zealand health system? And do we want to do from this end down to that end?
Because I'm the only one with one candidate, so I sort of feel that there's a bit of inequality in the answering of questions. But I don't
Someone jump up.
Yeah,
Be
we'll
the
go.
first.
We might tag team it for
Yes,
the sake
yes,
of time,
that's
because 2
perfect.
minutes is a long time.
Yeah.
Probably other questions want to come out. Maybe if I start with mental health, and then if you want. Yeah, I mean certainly mental health. It's been brought up a lot tonight, and Labour's policy. Labour's got a couple of policies around that. One is firstly, obviously, fund the health system properly and effectively, but we're going to put a nurse in every high school, and that's one of the key areas that we believe we can make an impact around the absolutely horrendous youth suicide rates. So a nurse in every high school, and the second one is we're going to put a mental health nurse in GP practices as well, because a lot of the time the GPs are trying to deal with mental health and they're not exactly equipped for it, so we'll put an expert in there.
Cool, all right, so this is a great question. All right, so first of all, mental health. So, I think we've already talked about mental health. Mental health is a big problem, not just for young people, for adults as well. Contrary to what the Nats have been saying recently, that we don't want mental health for older people. We want mental health to be great for everybody. As Jamie said, that one of the things we're going to do is have mental health nurses in schools, so that our kids who are struggling with depression have somebody to talk to, access to healthcare. The second thing that I really want is more funding for rural and primary care. So if you talk to GP college at the moment, they are really struggling to find GPs. But it's not because they don't want GPs, it's just that the government is not funding enough GP positions for people to go out and practice. And when they are funding it, most of them are not situated outside of cities like Auckland. So what we want is more rural health, more GPs in primary care. And I think Waikato Medical School is a great idea in principle, but we need to make sure that it works in practicality as well. The third thing that I think we need to look at is also the way our hospitals do their references. So for example, if you need a surgery, you're waiting for 6 months, and then you get this letter back saying, well, you've been removed off the list, and thank you very much, go back and see your GP, and then we'll put you back on the list. So I think that's something that we really need to look at. Why is it that's happening? Because one of the things that I found is, in the healthcare system is, it's very easy for you to just set a standard and then say we're meeting it by forcing it upon people. So for example, if you go to ED now, every patient must be seen within 6 hours and then moved out of ED. But the truth is many of them don't actually get any care, they just get moved out of ED, and then you get 100% statistics saying, well, every patient in New Zealand gets seen in ED in 6 hours, which is not the case. And this is the same with surgeries as well, where people have 6 months, but they don't actually get seen in 6 months, they just get a letter back. So primary health care, mental health care, and the way we diagnose our people and treat them. Thank you.
My 3 areas would be 1, free healthcare and education to break down the inequalities within the system. Major inequalities between the rich and the poor, and we need more healthcare to areas where families are ill or in need. Second area would be provide support and greater funding towards mental health services for the neglected ill. There's about 120 patients who commit suicide every year, like acute patients, and they're not given the care that they need within our hospitals. So that's the second area I'd focus on. And the third area is suicide prevention programs, including grief counselling to depressed and grieving people at risk. We need counsellors in all the schools, and also our youth care, share and help. We need to teach them to be there for one another, because I find with the 30 people I counsel every month that mothers with suicidal daughters, when I talk to the high school about them, they're not prepared to deal with that. So we need to teach in our schools, equip the counsellors to deal with suicide. So those are the 3 areas that I would focus on. Thank you.
We'll share the time, but I'll just talk about one area first that's a local one, and that is we've been working very hard on the Waikato Medical School, and we would love to see that come to fruition. Recently we've announced a package that would enable a competition of sorts between Auckland and Otago and Waikato over a rural medical school proposal. That's a $300 million commitment that the National Party has given through that program. The Labour Party, all they could manage was $30 million for extra GP help, so they're not serious about that proposal. So when you hear from the Labour Party that they support that, there is no money in their funding to enable that, and in their fully costed health funding So it is not a real promise from them. But for national, and we're very much wanting to see this happen for the Waikato, going to promote that as an option. You do 2 or 3.
Right. Well, as David has said, he and I are working incredibly hard on the Waikato Medical School proposal, and we're both 100% behind bringing it here. There is a critical shortage of doctors in our provincial areas. It's getting worse, and this is a really, really well-tested model based on a well-argued business case. It's been happening in Ontario, Canada, and several parts of Australia for some time, and it's shown to work, so we're right behind it. In this year's budget, we announced a $2.2 billion increase over the next 4 years in health because it is clearly an area of growing demand. I'm very proud, and if I can draw your attention to my own flyer, let me just give you some of the statistics about how health outcomes have increased. I mentioned in my introductory remarks that it's not just about spending money. The social investment strategy is about showing that the investment really works, because we're accountable to you for every dollar that we spend. So I'm delighted to tell you these are official Waikato DHB statistics that elective surgeries are up 61%, orthopaedic elective surgeries are up 29%, hips and knee replacements are up 53%, and first specialist assessments are up 36%. So you are seeing real improvement for your significant investment as taxpayers in our health and hospital system. We're very proud of the fact that we have now one of the best hospital campuses here in the Waikato in Australasia. If you think back 10 or 15 years ago, it was pretty run down. And it's a real joy now to go through some of the newer facilities, such as the Older Persons Rehab Centre, and see how good it is. Our time is up.
Isn't it amazing that they're spending more and more and more money, and yet we still have massive wait lists and an inability to access the services that we need? Remarkable, remarkable. So the first priority of the Green Party, of course, is mental health. We know that there's a huge crisis in mental health, and the first thing that we would do is ensure that we have an inquiry so we can understand fully where is the need and how can we best meet it to serve people. In the immediate short term, we would also increase funding because we know there is a gap. We know people need help and they need it now. So we would do those two things in tandem. And we've also announced that we would have free counselling for all people under 25, and we would work to extend that for all adults as well. Now, the second thing that I'm just going to talk about quickly is, do we have the light for the 1 minute? Right, thanks. And it's kind of a worldview or a perspectives thing. So for the Green Party, in terms of health, prevention and early treatment, we think, are huge priorities and that we need to invest more in that. So we want this to be evidence-based, and we want to have community treatment and support options available so we can keep people well and get them back on their feet before they have to end up in hospital or in secondary kind of care circumstances. So we would ensure that for all under 18s, they have free access to nurses, doctors and prescriptions, and we would also have nurses in all decile 1 to 4 schools. So the other aspect of the way that we are thinking in terms of preventative and early treatment is also to say that we have to consider the interaction that our health has with areas like housing, education, unemployment and income, because they're hugely related. Sure.
The other part of that is from One Woman in Purple, who was Kate Shepherd, so Suffrage Day is coming up, to another Woman in Purple, who was Florence Nightingale. We need to speak about the nursing and caregiving workforce in this country. There are a number of issues that nurses, midwives and caregivers have been putting forward over the last decade, and those include care capacity demand management in the hospitals, which we otherwise know as safe staffing, pay equity, and Māori nurses. So I'm going to run out of time now. But Māori nurses to lead a healthcare workforce by Māori for Māori to deal with those specific issues. Kia ora.
Ladies and gentlemen, for New Zealand First, we'd ensure a properly funded and resourced public health service. And the situation we have at the Waikato Hospital at the present time is not operate. The capacity is in a situation where they can't take any more patients, and so that has to be addressed. And it's a growing phenomenon because last week Middlemore Hospital reported the same thing. So quite clearly, while the budget indicated that there will be an increased funding for DHBs in 2018, if you look at 2020-21 figures from government, the funding is flattening out. So there needs to be more resources. Secondly, now, I don't know if there's anyone who's got a gold card. You all look so young. But if you have a gold card, if you're a holder of a gold card, we are advocating for 3 free doctor's visits per year. Now, if you're going to want to reduce the demand on our health services in terms of hospital treatment, then look at our old people. Give them free access to doctors so that we can harness the need for them to go to hospital. And the third thing is affordable prescription charges for all New Zealanders. And I'll let Shane...
Okay, so New Zealand has a world-class health system. We pay 6 cents in the dollar for it. And the Opportunities Party believe we have to invest in the prevention like I said earlier, by reducing poverty, looking at our mental health system and investing more in drug and alcohol treatments. The biggest problem with our health is what we put in our mouths, and so, and I know because I've got a sweet tooth. So we do need to look at that, because diabetes, especially within Māori communities, plays havoc. Our health system should be coordinated and fair. There are massive inequalities within our health system, and Māori unfortunately are at the tail end of that. So we're not actually getting the services that we are entitled to, and we want to sort that out as well. And in regards to the funding of our health system, our health funding should go to where it can deliver the greatest health benefit. TOP will establish a health sector funder independent of the ministry. This group will have a strong mandate to invest for cost-effective, retire old technology and monitor resulting workforce issues. And that's really important, and that's to regionalise the issues dealing with our health system. But in regards to, if I can just respond to the creating a medical school here in the Waikato, the Opportunities Party is about evidence, and I'm not sure if the evidence is there to whether or not we should be spending $300 million on a health, another school to create doctors. And because we're evidence-based, the Opportunities Party will need to see the evidence before they support anything of that factor. And the reason why I say this is only in 2013 we were losing a lot of doctors to overseas because we couldn't actually find jobs for them. So hence the reason why I question whether or not there's a need to create a new school, or should we be creating an incentive to bring those doctors back home. Kia ora.
Well, the very last question on my list, if you think yes, you may stand. It's just a yes-no question. Do you think there should be a train between Auckland and Hamilton? Yes.
Yes. Can I go this way and explain I want to explain my answer. That isn't possible to answer with a yes or no question.
I think it is. I think it is.
Long term, yes. Short term, we should take advantage. Short term, we should take advantage of the completed Waikato Expressway and have a park across facility.
Yes or no?
Not a fair question.
For their time tonight. Thank you all for coming along. You provided really informative answers to the questions for all of us. I'd also like to thank Katrina and Annie for hosting to help host tonight. Please stay behind. We've got some tea and bickies. Hopefully the candidates stay behind if you've got any questions that you'd like to ask them as well. Thanks.